My life ended in a cramped apartment that smelled of turpentine and stale coffee. The people who killed me were my girlfriend, Clara, and the man she told me was just an old friend, Julian. They wanted my designs, the culmination of years of work I had poured my soul into, and when I wouldn't give them up, they decided my life was a fair price to pay. I remember the shock of the blade. Not a clean slice like in the movies, but a messy, tearing pain. I remember their faces, not monstrous but clinical and determined, as they watched the light fade from my eyes. My last thought was of the sheer stupid injustice of it all. Then, nothing. Until I opened my eyes again. The harsh fluorescent lights of my office blinked above me. My ears were ringing with a familiar, shrill voice. It was Clara's. I was surrounded by the contents of my desk, scattered across the floor in a deliberate act of humiliation. I was back. I was alive. And it was the very day my life had first been stolen from me. The day they accused me of being a plagiarist. A wave of ice and fire washed through me. The chilling memory of death, followed by the burning heat of a second chance. This time I knew the script. I knew their lines, their moves, and their ultimate intentions. "Get out of the design industry," Clara was shouting, her voice performatively righteous for the benefit of our co-workers. "You're a disgrace to designers." The hateful comments I remembered flooding my screen, the public shaming, the breakup she would use this as a pretense for. It was all rushing back. Last time, I had fought, pleaded, and tried to reason with them, only to be systematically destroyed. This time would be different. I looked at Clara, at the feigned disgust on her face, and then at Julian standing by her side with a look of smug concern. He was the son of the design director, a fact I hadn't known then, a connection that had sealed my fate from the start. I suppressed the hatred that felt like bile in my throat and calmly began to gather my things. The design director, Julian's father, watched from his office, his inaction a silent approval of the proceedings. I didn't waste a single breath on a defense. They expected a fight, a desperate plea of innocence. Instead, I gave them silence. I carefully collected my drafting tools and personal effects, leaving the contested manuscripts scattered on the floor. Let them have the battle. I was already planning the war. I picked up my box and walked towards the exit, the whispers of my colleagues following me like ghosts. Sooner or later, I knew, they would be begging me to return. Outside the tall glass doors of the firm, the city air was thick and humid. Clara blocked my path, her arms crossed, the victor's smirk already forming on her lips. She was about to deliver the breakup speech I remembered so vividly. I beat her to it. "We're done," I said, my voice flat and devoid of the emotion she expected. I looked straight through her, at the traffic passing behind her on the street. "I don't date thieves." Her face contorted, shock warring with fury. "You're the thief! How dare you say that to me?" I didn't answer. I just walked away, leaving her standing on the pavement, her angry shouts swallowed by the noise of the city. The moment I got back to the apartment we had shared, I dropped my box and fell onto the bed, the exhaustion hitting me like a physical blow. In my previous life, the stress and the relentless online harassment had stolen my sleep for weeks. I was a walking ghost long before Julian's knife had made it official. I remembered staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzing with endless notifications of hate, trying to figure out how to present the evidence I had. Proof of my original work, time-stamped files, preliminary sketches, before they silenced me for good. My memory of what came next was sharp and terrifying. Lying in this very bed, I had drifted into a fitful sleep, only to be jolted awake by a pillow pressed over my face. As I struggled for air, I saw Clara's face, cold and impassive. Then Julian was there, stabbing me again and again. "Blame yourself for being unlucky," he'd said, his voice calm. "If you handed over the manuscript earlier, this wouldn't have happened." Their smug faces were the last thing I saw. They believed that with my death, the accusations of plagiarism against Julian would die too. He would go on to win the prestigious International Designer Contest with my work, his victory speech a sickening ode to self-discipline and originality that haunted my disembodied consciousness. No one ever found my body. The official story was that I'd fled the country out of guilt. My parents, heartbroken and confused, aged a decade in a matter of months. I pushed myself up, the dream or memory still vivid in my mind. I splashed cold water on my face, rubbing my cheeks hard until the phantom pains subsided. This time there would be no helplessness. This time I would be the one pulling the strings. I sat down at my computer, the glow of the screen illuminating a new resolve on my face. The designer contest Julian cared so much about, the one that had launched his international career, would be his undoing. I navigated to the registration page and skillfully filled in my details. This time, I would hit him where it hurt the most. After registering, I systematically burned every physical copy of my manuscripts. Their contents were seared into my brain, etched there by the thousands of times I'd been forced to defend them online. The process had been agonizing, but it had also forged the designs, solidifying them, and even inspiring new, better ideas. My mind was now the only place they existed, and it was a vault they could never crack. The next day I made 2 calls. The first was to a private security firm, hiring 2 bodyguards to stay at my apartment around the clock. The second was to a car service. I was heading out of town to finally purchase some rare, high-concept fabrics I had admired for years, but had never been able to afford or justify for a corporate project. Before leaving, I gathered all of Clara's belongings, every piece of clothing, every book, every sentimental trinket, and piled them in a neat stack of boxes by the front door. Last time her living in my apartment had given her unfettered access to steal my work. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Letting the 2 burly guards into the apartment, I gave them their instructions, and then headed downstairs. Near the city limits, my phone rang. It was Clara. "Are you home? I want to come get my things," she said, her tone clipped and annoyed. "Oh, you still care about that junk?" I replied, unable to resist a bit of sarcasm. "I figured your new patron, Julian, would just buy you all new things. He is the son of our design director, after all." A beat of silence. "I'm not home," I said, my voice turning cold. "Your stuff is by the door. Come get it whenever you want." I had no patience for her games and hung up before she could respond. Her words, however, confirmed my suspicions. The director's son. No wonder my swift, unceremonious firing had met with no resistance from upper management. The rot went deeper than I thought. This was getting more interesting by the minute. That evening, I got a call from the head of the security firm. "Mr. Vance," he said, "we apprehended 2 individuals attempting to unlawfully enter your residence." "Just throw them out," I said calmly. "No need to involve the police." After I hung up, he sent me the surveillance footage. I watched it on my laptop in my hotel room, a grim smile on my face. The video showed Clara and Julian sneaking up to my door. She keyed in the old password, but I had already changed it. As they tried to jimmy the lock, the door swung open, and my 2 bodyguards unceremoniously dragged them inside. When Julian struggled, one of the guards landed a clean, satisfying punch squarely on his jaw. They were then physically ejected into the hallway. It was a small, petty victory, but it was a start. I spent a week away, sourcing my materials and clearing my head. The moment I returned to my building, I saw the design director himself, Julian's father, waiting by my door with his assistant. He smiled when he saw me, a predatory, insincere expression. "Leo, good to see you. About that project design you haven't submitted yet?" I looked at him, my face a mask of indifference. "I'm sorry, at the request of your son and his girlfriend, I've already left the company. I'm no longer on that project. There's no design." His smile vanished. He tried to negotiate for a while, but seeing I wasn't budging, his demeanor turned hard and threatening. "Leo, you better hand over that design," he hissed, "or I will make sure you never work in this city, in this industry, ever again." I raised an eyebrow. "You're threatening to ruin the career of a man you've already publicly branded a plagiarist?" "Go ahead. What more can you do?" "Oh, and by the way," I added, pointing to the corner of the ceiling, "there's a security camera right there recording this entire conversation." I unlocked my door and stepped inside, shutting it firmly in his stunned, furious face. They were left fuming in the hallway. The apartment no longer felt safe. I had my bodyguards pack up everything of value. I was moving back to my family's villa on the outskirts of the city. For Clara's sake, to protect what she had called her pride, I had purchased this small 2-bedroom apartment and pretended it was a rental we were struggling to afford. I could still hear her self-righteous declarations. "Leo, if we just work hard together, we can really make a life for ourselves and settle down in this city." The memory of her feigned determination, her flattery and fawning over Julian made my stomach turn. I had planned to tell her the truth about my family and my background after the design competition. She had destroyed any feelings I had for her long before that could happen. As I was directing the movers, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Leo, what is all this I'm hearing from the subsidiary? Why are they posting online that you plagiarized someone's work?" I had tried to keep this from my parents. I checked the company's official social media page. There it was, a formal announcement stating that I, Leo Vance, had been terminated for plagiarizing designs from my colleague, Julian Croft, and that my internal brand was being dissolved. "It's nothing, Mom," I said, forcing a reassuring tone. "Just some office politics. I can handle it. I'm actually craving your braised ribs, though." "You've got it, son," she said, her voice still laced with worry. After we hung up, my eyes darkened. So this was their next move. Pathetic. Online, the backlash was beginning to build just as it had before. Julian was a master of social media, frequently posting carefully curated selfies alongside my stolen designs. He cultivated an army of admirers who swooned over his supposed looks and talent. "The handsome designer," they called him. "Looks and talent. God held nothing back with him," they'd comment. I, on the other hand, had always been private, never sharing photos or participating in industry events outside of my actual work. The internet mob, with nothing else to go on, painted me as some bitter, ugly old man. My father, a man used to solving problems quickly and decisively, wanted to unleash our family's corporate PR team on them. I stopped him. "Dad, just give me some time," I pleaded. "I have a plan. I need to do this myself. Please don't you and Mom worry." My phone rang again. It was the CEO of the subsidiary. "Leo," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "What do you think you're doing? Just confess. People online might forgive you. Otherwise, how do you plan to stay in this industry? You think you're some kind of rich heir who can do whatever he wants?" I laughed, a short, humorless sound. I didn't bother to correct his ignorance. It was true that I'd studied abroad for years, and few people in the subsidiary knew what the heir to the parent corporation actually looked like. They certainly didn't realize that many of the major contracts they'd secured over the past few years were thanks to my family's connections, which I had leveraged quietly. I hung up the phone. Their ignorance would be their downfall. A few days later, Clara and Julian showed up at my old apartment, undoubtedly looking for the manuscripts. They found it empty. She called me, her voice a mix of frustration and arrogance. "Leo, so how does it feel to be roasted online? You deserve it." I didn't need to see her face to picture her smug expression. "Whether someone deserves something or not will be decided soon enough," I said coldly. "I'll see you both at the design competition." Then I hung up, cutting off her sputtering reply. The competition was being held overseas in the United States. On the day of my departure, I received a call from the local police department requesting my cooperation in a theft investigation. When I arrived at the station, I saw Clara waiting. I understood immediately. It was a petty, transparent ploy to make me miss my flight. An officer showed me a photo of a necklace. "Mr. Vance, Miss Bell claims this necklace of hers went missing from your apartment. She didn't see it when she collected her other belongings." I looked at the photo, hiding the pang of disappointment. It was the first piece of jewelry I'd ever bought her, purchased with the first real money I had ever earned from a design. I calmly presented the security footage from my apartment's hallway camera, which clearly showed Clara picking up a small jewelry box first, before the rest of her things, and even peeking inside it. "Officer," I said calmly, "it appears it wasn't lost at my place. Perhaps she should look for it at her own home." Seeing her plan had failed, Clara quickly apologized to the police for the misunderstanding. As I left the station, she caught up with me. "Leo, you can't beat Julian. Just give up now." I looked at her, at the desperate, pity-inducing expression on her face. "If these minor tricks are the best you two have," I said, pushing past her, "this is going to be incredibly boring." All the commercial flights were fully booked, just as they'd planned. I called my family's driver. "Prep the jet," I said. "I'm heading to the competition." I arrived at the venue 30 minutes before the opening ceremony. The entire competition was being live-streamed. On stage, during the introduction of the designers, I saw the flash of panic in Julian's eyes when he saw me. I calmly introduced myself, my presence itself a refutation of their narrative that I had fled in shame. The theme for the first round was announced: meaning. I smiled. The unique fabrics I had just purchased would be perfect. Back home, my surprise appearance at the competition ignited a firestorm of online debate. While many were still convinced I was a plagiarist, a new contingent emerged, swayed by my calm demeanor and, shallow as it was, my appearance on camera. One comment, buried deep in a forum, caught my eye. "Is it possible that Leo Vance, the designer, and the heir to the Vance Corporation are related?" The family resemblance is there. I had to admire their perceptiveness. They had guessed correctly. We had 2 days to prepare our pieces for the preliminary round. I worked tirelessly, finishing my main competition piece with a day to spare. I used the leftover fabric to create a few additional pieces for a new brand I was conceptualizing. Since they had shut down my old one, I figured it was time for a fresh start. On the day of the prelims, I returned to my dressing room after having my design fitted on the model to find my work in shreds. The beautiful garment I had painstakingly created was nothing but a pile of scraps on the floor. I didn't bother cleaning it up. I just sat down and waited. Soon enough, the competition kicked off. I was scheduled to present after Julian. When my name was called and I didn't appear immediately, Julian joked to the livestream camera, "I wonder if he got scared and ran away." I emerged from the wings, chuckling. "No way," I said into my microphone. "I was just busy giving my outfit a little makeover. It seems someone wasn't a fan of the original and cut it into pieces for me." I showed the judges and the camera the pile of shredded fabric. Then, as Julian presented his piece, I pulled a backup design from my box, a simple, elegant dress, and began sewing the scraps from the ruined garment onto it, transforming it into something new and layered right there on the stage. I explained the concept, turning an act of sabotage into a statement about reconstruction and resilience. As I waited for the scores, I walked over to the mannequin displaying Julian's work. It was, I noted with a surge of cold fury, a design I had created for our old company's New Year collection. I knew Nancy must have passed the sketches to him. "Julian," I said with a pleasant smile, "they're calling you a design genius back home. Mind if I take a look at your work?" He eyed me cautiously, but couldn't refuse. I ran my hands over the fabric, flipping the collar and checking the seams. Near the cuff of the sleeve, hidden in the intricate stitching, I found what I was looking for. My own personal maker's mark. A tiny, almost invisible knot I stitched into every one of my original pieces. Satisfied, I stepped back. The results were announced soon after. Julian and I, along with a few others, were moving on to the semi-finals. After everyone had cleared out, I returned to my dressing room and retrieved the tiny hidden camera I had placed on the mannequin, which had captured everything. Back at my hotel, I watched the footage. It showed a furious Julian alone in the dressing room, muttering to my design as he slashed it with a pair of shears. "Who the hell do you think you are, Leo?" He seethed at the inanimate object. "The championship is mine." My phone rang. It was my childhood friend, Henry. "Leo, how's the competition going? I saw you on the live stream. Want to grab a drink?" "I'm a little busy," I replied, "but I could use your help with something tomorrow." The next day at the semi-finals, I spotted Clara in the backstage area. She immediately tried to taunt me. "You shouldn't have gone up against Julian," she said smugly. "We had dinner with one of the judges last night. There's no way you can win." I ignored her, quietly turning off the recording I had started on my phone the moment I saw her approaching. Just before the competition began, Julian walked over to me, the model assigned to me by the sponsors in tow. He smirked. "Sorry, Leo. Your model doesn't want to be associated with a plagiarist." I glanced at him, unimpressed. Who said I was using the model provided by them? This round's theme was lifestyle, and participants were allowed to bring their own models. I knew Julian would try something like this. "Bro," Henry said, appearing by my side, "you're just going to let him push you around like that?" I playfully smacked the back of his head. "This is strategy, my friend. Learn the game." I took the stage with my model, who just so happened to be Henry, the CEO of a major entertainment company and a recognizable face in his own right. He showcased the beauty of my design perfectly. The stunt caused a stir, and I scored the highest marks from every judge except for one. A man named Joey, who strangely gave me the lowest possible score. Julian, once again using a design based on my stolen sketches, also managed to land a spot in the finals. The day of the finals, as I was heading to the event, a car suddenly swerved and crashed into the side of mine. Thanks to the foresight of having my bodyguards with me, I only ended up with a sprained ankle. When I limped into the venue, I noticed Julian already there, his right hand wrapped in bandages with blood visibly seeping through. I immediately understood. Without a word, I had my own hand wrapped in a similar bandage. The finals required on-the-spot creation. Before the contest, I had prepared all my evidence: the footage of Julian destroying my first piece, the recording of Clara admitting to dining with a judge, and even security footage from the hotel hallway showing Julian intentionally slamming his own hand in a doorframe. During the creation period, his determination to work through his injury won him praise from the judges. During his closing statement, he addressed them with practiced fervor. "I'm sorry I couldn't finish as strongly as I'd hoped," he said, holding up his bandaged hand. "As you can see, my hand is injured. I can only hope this was a genuine accident, and not something done with malicious intent." He shot a quick, meaningful glance in my direction. When it was my turn, I simply submitted my design, an elaborate and breathtaking wedding gown. "A good design speaks for itself," I said. In the end, it was enough. My wedding gown won the championship. During the award presentation, just as the head judge was about to hand me the trophy, Julian stood up. "This isn't fair," he shouted. "How can you give the title to a plagiarist? This result isn't convincing." The judges looked uncomfortable. While my designs were flawless, the controversy from back home still lingered. I turned to them. "May I have a moment to address his accusations?" Given the green light, I played the evidence on the big screen for the entire world to see. The footage of Julian destroying my clothes, the audio of Clara bragging about influencing a judge, the clip of Julian hurting himself and then blaming me. I turned to the flustered, pale-faced man. "On what grounds do you call me a plagiarist?" I asked, my voice ringing through the silent auditorium. "Is it because you are the true plagiarist? Because of everything you have done to steal my work and ruin my name? Does my answer satisfy you, Julian?" The audience and judges erupted. Overcome with panic, Julian tried to flee but tripped over my outstretched foot, face-planting hard on the stage. This time, I had finally won the championship I deserved. After the ceremony, my phone rang. It was the CEO from the subsidiary back home. "Leo, congratulations on the win. Your desk is still here when you get back. We're all waiting for you to come back to work." I let out a cold laugh. "Who told you I'm coming back to work?" I asked. "In fact, you might want to start preparing yourself for not working anymore." I hung up before he could reply. It was time to go home and clean house. The trip home was a triumph. Public opinion had shifted entirely. Julian was being slammed online, and I was receiving the apologies I was owed. Under pressure, Julian somehow persuaded Clara to take the fall for him. I read his public statement with a sense of bitter irony. He claimed he'd hit a design block, and his assistant, Clara, had brought him some drafts to inspire him, admitting to referencing the structure, but not outright copying. He offered me a hollow apology. The moment I got off the plane, I was swarmed. Clara was there, blocking my path and grabbing my suitcase. "Leo, you still love me, right?" she pleaded, her eyes wide. "Why else would you design that wedding dress? I'm willing to marry you, Leo." Before I could even retort, a crush of fans and reporters pushed her aside. Luckily, my family's security team cleared a path, and I made it home smoothly. I handed the award-winning wedding gown to my mother. "The day after tomorrow is your rescheduled wedding," I said. "This is for you." She smiled, her eyes shining. The wedding was an exclusive affair, but my parents, in their joy, declared it an open event where anyone could come to eat and share in the celebration. This openness allowed Clara to sneak in. As my mother and I were welcoming guests, she stormed in, teary-eyed. "Leo, isn't this the wedding dress you made for me? Why is she wearing it?" she shrieked, pointing at my mother. Then she started laughing, a wild, unhinged sound. "Or did she buy you off?" I slapped her across the face, hard. My mother showed no sympathy. "Miss," she said, her voice like ice, "I never would have thought someone so shameless existed, to openly support a plagiarist." She had security drag Clara onto the stage. Taking the microphone, my mother addressed the guests. "Welcome everyone to my wedding, and allow me to introduce my son, Leo Vance, who will be inheriting the family business." Upon learning my true background, Clara looked dazed, her entire world reconfiguring in her mind. Security promptly and efficiently tossed her out the door. With my parents' wedding over, it was time to handle my own matters. When I arrived at my old company, I ran into Julian and his father in the lobby. They were carrying cardboard boxes, their faces desolate. They glared at me with pure hatred. I just smiled back. Upstairs, the boss rushed to greet me, stammering apologies. "I've already fired Julian, Clara, and the director," he said, trying to take credit. "Pack your things and leave," I told him, my voice devoid of emotion. "You've been here for 10 years. Let's not make things ugly." With the company's bad apples finally gone, I began to take over the family business. I uncovered that Julian hadn't just copied my work. He had a history of stealing from young designers and mercilessly suppressing anyone who couldn't fight back. I found a few of them and recruited them, assuring them a place where they could design freely. Armed with a mountain of evidence, I went to the police. Julian's plagiarism was irrefutable. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay a hefty fine. Clara was fined for her role as an accomplice. Their efforts had amounted to nothing. I watched from a distance as they quarreled intensely at the station after the verdict. "Where's the money you promised me, Julian?" she screamed, clawing at him. "You were my everything!" He shoved her away. "No one wants you," he spat back. "Don't think I don't know about your past, about the things you did for money." I felt a profound sense of relief that I had never truly been with her. She had always pretended to be pure, claiming intimacy could only happen after marriage. Thankfully, my passion for design had always been stronger than my physical needs, so her manipulations had never fully worked on me. After Julian's incarceration, Clara took to the internet, pleading for sympathy with twisted tales about our relationship. She was met mostly with ridicule. The last I heard of her for a while was over drinks with Henry. "Leo, your ex-girlfriend caused quite a scene," he said, pulling up a video on his phone. It was a live stream. In it, Clara's father was yanking her by the hair, beating her in the middle of a street. "You said you were going to the city to buy me a house," he was shouting. "All you do is complain online. You've embarrassed the whole family. Why don't you just come back and get married? I can still get 100,000 in dowry for you." I watched the pathetic scene and chuckled, downing the last of my drink. My friend looked at me smirking. "Any thoughts on having an ex like that?" His words took me back to the first time I met her, at a freshman party. She had stood out in her simple jeans while everyone else was dressed up. She'd handed me a cocktail, winking, "Hey, handsome, drink this one. It's expensive." Maybe I had been drawn to what I thought was simplicity. I looked at Henry and shook my head. "I just dated her," I said. "It's not like I committed a felony. Can we move on?" Sometime later, my father tasked me with a major rural redevelopment project. It had the potential to become a luxury resort. One of the candidate villages sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. When we approached the village, I saw her in the small group of people waiting at the entrance. It was Clara's hometown. She watched me eagerly as I got out of the car, but I ignored her, beginning my tour with the village leader. After a few days of camping on site and assessing the potential, I concluded that her village was, on paper, the best candidate. I gathered the villagers to explain the generous compensation plan. Just as everyone seemed ready to agree, Clara's greedy father spoke up, demanding more money. "Fine," I said, turning to leave. "I'll just check out the next village on my list." The village leader quickly grabbed my arm, begging me to stay and negotiate. After the contracts were signed and construction began, Clara blocked my path as we were packing up to leave. She was noticeably pregnant. "Leo, you still have feelings for me, don't you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Out of all the villages, why did you choose ours? Please, can you take me away with you?" "I'm a businessman," I said, my voice flat. "This was a business decision. Your village offered the best return on investment." Just then, a man I assumed was her husband appeared, grabbing her by the hair and dragging her away, slapping her as he went. "Still daring to bother other people?" he yelled. "The village almost lost a fortune because of your father." I watched them go, feeling nothing at all. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. The resort project was a massive success. My designs went international. Seeing my parents' proud, satisfied smiles, I felt a sense of peace. All the grievances from my past life had been settled. My career had reached a new height, and for the first time in what felt like 2 lifetimes, everything was finally moving in the right direction.